Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, my top 10 list of safety tips for the jointer and thickness planer. Well, here we are at week 5 and the final week for our top 10 lists of safety tips. And so far we have covered the lathe, the table saw, the drill press, and the bandsaw. And today we're going to join two tools together, which is the thickness planer and the jointer, because the safety tips for the most part can be used for both of them. So without further ado, let's get to the list. Number 10. Well, number 10 is all about proximity of your hands to the opening of your planer. And for my opinion, and for my peace of mind, I would not be getting my hands any closer than about 6 inches. It's just not necessary. By the time you start feeding in this stock, at some point in time, long before your hands get anywhere close to here, the in-feed roller takes the stock and starts to do the work for you. At that point, there's really no need to have your hands here pushing it in because the machine's doing the work. It's what it's designed to do. So let it do it and get your hands out of the way. So at number 10, do not get your hands close to this infeed. Number 9. Well, number 9 is along the same thought process as number 10, which is keeping your fingers in your hands away from your cutters. The jointer is a little different in that with the thickness planer, the machine and the infeed rollers take your stock and they pull it through and they feed it automatically. The jointer, you are the feed rollers, you are the power behind it, and because of that, your fingers are going to be getting in the way. So when you're end jointing this piece like this here, there are some that would say that this here is over the fence, so you can just do this kind of a thing and be just fine. I don't agree with that. If you're going to be holding your stock in against the fence, I don't want my fingers anywhere near it. So for me, it's a push pad, and it's pushing it against the fence as I feed it through. It's fine to be back here on the top edge, but when this kind of a situation, no, use a push pad, guys. And as well, any kind of face jointing, you want push pads. At no point in time should your hands be pushing this stock through where you only have this kind of 3/4 of an inch at the end to have the tip of your thumb taken off by your jointer. So at all times when pushing stock through, in my opinion, you should be using push pads or push sticks. And as I've said before, keep them easily accessible, because if they're not, you're not going to use them. And mine are kept right here at this back ledge behind the jointer. So very easy to access, and therefore you have a much greater chance of using them instead of taking a shortcut. Number 8. While sharp blades are important in a thickness planer for quality of cut, they're not necessarily a safety issue because, again, the machine does the feeding. So while you may get some burning and that sort of thing, it's not a safety concern as far as I'm concerned. But dull blades on the jointer are a different story, because as I said in the previous point, you are the feed rollers, you are the power. So as you're pushing it through, now you've got dull blades, you are going to need more power to push that through. And it gives you more of an opportunity for slips, to suddenly now put yourself in a dangerous situation because you're putting too much pressure behind it. So with that same thought in mind, you also want to treat your beds on your jointer planer, whether it be with paste wax or with the Autosol metal polish that I prefer, or say a glide coat spray. Make it so that your stock is easily slidable, so that you're not using extra force to push it through, which could throw you off balance and cause a mishap if the wood or your pads or something should slip because you're giving excessive pressure. So sharp blades and a well-coated infeed and outfeed table. Number 7. A lot of the safety with these tools that have high RPMs and sharp blades is all about keeping your fingers away. And at number 7, it's all about this red plate right here, which is the blade guard. Guys, I've seen a lot of planers that have this removed. I guess it's too much of an inconvenience for the operator to push the stock through and have this slide out to the side, so they remove it. If you're purchasing a jointer secondhand and it doesn't have the blade guard, or they don't have the blade guard and its parts to provide you with, don't buy it. It doesn't matter how good of a deal it is, it's not that good of a deal when you're heading to the hospital for mangling your fingers. Guys, the blade guard should push easily away from the blade as your stock goes through, and it should return back to touch your fence. It should completely cover the blade. And it doesn't matter if I move this fence back, that blade guard is going to follow. And if it doesn't follow and it doesn't cover the entire blade, you can adjust your spring here. So make sure that you've got your blade guard in place, that it moves freely, and that at all times during the operation, it's covering the parts of the blade that are not in contact with your stock. Number 6. Number 6 is all about the length of stock that you can run through these machines. What is the smallest or the shortest piece that you can run through? Is this okay to run through the jointer to clean up this one edge? Absolutely not. Guys, if you do something like this, what's going to happen as this comes in is it's going to dip just like that. It's going to dip down just before the outfeed table and gouge your wood. Best case scenario. Worst case scenario, that blade is going to hook this piece and fire it out of your hands, at which point in time the down pressure puts your hands right in line with where the wood was at the blade level. This is not acceptable. For the jointer, you want a longer piece because your stock needs to bridge both in-feed and out-feed table in order to be operating safely and in order to do its job properly. So for the jointer, I would not go below 12 inches as far as the piece that you can run through it. But what about the thickness planer? Well, the basic operation of a thickness planer is that you push your stock in, and initially it will contact in-feed rollers that will start to guide your stock and pull it in. The second thing it's going to contact is going to be the cutter heads. And then shortly after the cutter heads, it's going to contact outfeed rollers. Now that second set of rollers is what keeps your stock level and keeps it straight. Here's the problem. You run a short piece through, it contacts your in-feed rollers. The next thing it contacts is your blade. But it doesn't have time to get to the outfeed rollers to be held down properly before it comes off the in-feed rollers. Next thing you know, your stock is sucked into the blade, damaging your machine or firing it back out through where you just fed it in. Guys, again, I would say for the thickness planer, nothing shorter than 12 inches. If you want a more technical measurement, you can measure between your in-feed and your out-feed rollers to give you the absolute minimum that you can plane. But at the same, in the same token, I wouldn't trust that. Play it safe, guys, and nothing less than 12 inches on the length, running through either a thickness planer or the jointer. Number 5. Well, number 5 is applicable to both machines, and it boils down to dust collection. And much like the majority of the other major machines in the shop, the bandsaw, the table saw, the router table, the thickness planer and the jointer also have 4-inch dust ports. So it's very important to get the dust collection in place and to have it take that dust and all the finer particles out of the air and out of your lungs. I can't say enough about it. Get yourself a dust collector if you don't have one already. And as I've said on other episodes of these safety tip videos, if your machine has a 4-inch port for dust collection, your shop vac is not going to handle the amount of dust that machine produces. So get yourself a proper collector with a proper sized hose for the machines that you're using. Number 4. Number 4 is a tip that a lot of woodworkers don't know about. And how many times have you gone to use your thickness planer with the dust collection, and while you're using it, if you touch the in-feed or out-feed table, you get a bad shock? That's where the safety issue comes in. Sawdust is extremely combustible, and this machine is producing sawdust. But where does that static charge come from? The static charge is generated from using a plastic hose with your dust collection and drawing sawdust through it at a rate of speed. Those particles going through the dust collection hose create a static charge. Of course, it has nowhere to go, so it's waiting for someone to discharge it, and you become the path to ground by touching the machine, and suddenly, zap, it discharges. It's potentially dangerous. It could potentially ignite. So the safety tip here is make sure that if you're using a 4-inch dust hose or you have plastic hoses for your dust collection, make sure they're properly grounded. You need it can just be a small copper wire, but it needs to run right through your hoses and ground out your system. For mine, I have a copper wire through it. I think it's like a number 10 or number 12 bare copper wire. It runs right through the entire system of hoses, and at the end it exits with an alligator clip. I have an extra wire that comes from my electrical panel that connects directly to my ground, the main ground of the system. And all I have to do is, when I'm using the larger ports on the dust collection, I connect that wire to the alligator clip, and now my system is grounded directly to the house ground of my panel. Takes away all that discharge, takes away that static electricity, and it completely eliminates the possibility of that static charge igniting the dust in the shop. So guys, do yourself a favor and ground your dust collection system properly. Number 3. Well, number 3 involves both of them, both machines, and number 3 is applicable to both. And what that is end grain planing. Guys, I see a lot of woodworkers online who take their end grain cutting boards and run it through a thickness planer to flatten it out. Don't do it, guys. I also see guys using the jointer to clean up end grain. on a board. Don't do that either. It's not a safe practice. Bare minimum, in the thickness planer, you're looking at destroying your board when the blades dig into that end grain and tear it apart. That's the best case scenario. Worst case is it starts breaking up your glue joints and firing blocks of stock out the infeed at you. This one here, it's not what it's designed to do. It is not designed to play an end grain. And while some of you may have had success with that, that's great. But I'm going to say don't do it. That's my opinion. And you can do it if you like, but I wouldn't suggest it. No end grain in the planers, guys.
Number two.
Well, number two is all about body positioning when it comes to the thickness planer. If you haven't seen it or don't know about it, kickback on a planer is a very real thing, and it can cause some serious injuries. Not just to your hands, but to your body, depending on where you stand or how you position yourself in relation to the tool. So as I said before, your hands will never get any closer than 6 inches. The infeed roller then takes it and it starts feeding through. Your hands are out of the picture now, so if there is a kickback, no injury to your hands, great. But stand off to the side. Don't stand directly in front of that infeed table like some people do, because if it kicks back, you're getting it in the gut. If you've got a table that's a little lower, you're getting it in the... Ow. Stand off to the side. Keep all your body parts safe from the kickback that the planer can produce. And seriously, off to the side where you're safe.
Number one.
Well, number one is something that I can't stress enough when using either one of these machines, and that is PPE, personal protective equipment. Guys, that includes a pair of safety glasses, and most importantly here with these two, it involves some kind of hearing protection, whether it be earplugs or whether it be muffs like this. It really doesn't matter. You need to protect your hearing from these machines. With the combination of the machine doing its job and the dust collection, the decibel level is astronomical, and it does not take long to damage your hearing. If you're one that has visitors in your shop from time to time, honestly, guys, have an extra set for them. Whether it be this style or even if you have a little package off to the side of disposable earplugs. If you have visitors in your shop, they need to be protected as well. So, at number one, it's personal protective equipment. Protect your body so you can continue to work another day. And there you have it. My top 10 list of safety tips for the jointer and the thickness planer. Guys, I've said it before, and here we go again. This is not a definitive list. This is not the end of it. After all, I didn't even mention about removing the power before mucking around with the blades and that sort of thing. Guys, I'm sure that you can come up with way more than what I've mentioned here today, and I hope that you're going to drop them down below so that you can share them with me and share them with other viewers. You may have found an experience over time that has caused you to take an extra step in safety, and we'd love to hear about it, so drop it down below in the comments. Guys, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the bell so that you don't miss notifications of future programs. Share the video if you like the content. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this 5-part series on top 10 safety tips. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another
Alternative Tuesdays.